Here is how I traveled the world and used astrocartography this year for maximum results, success, flow, and fun. Let's get started with today's video here on Astrocartography with Helena. Hello from Amsterdam.
From Brooklyn, New York.
From beautiful Ubud, Bali.
From San Diego.
I am in Iceland right now.
Shanghai.
I'm in Paris at the moment. I am here on my Jupiter descendant line in Tallinn, Estonia. Hello from Biarritz in France. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Helena, where I talk all about astrocartography and the energy and stories of place and location. In this video, I want to do a recap on the last 6 months where I have essentially traveled the world full time, going to all of these different lines and latitudes to activate the stories of things that I'm working toward in my life, and how I used astrocartography for the maximum results and success and fun in my life, using also transits and progressions. If you're new around here and you don't know me, hello, I am Helena. I am a professional astrocartographer traveling the world full time, doing private one-on-one readings, teaching online courses, and also writing books. I am an author, creator, and all-around free spirit, just making whatever feels like fun, flow, and joy from my heart. And if you wanted to learn more about astrocartography, be sure to check out my free astrocartography guide and cheat sheet in the link in the description down below. I also just have tons of free content on my blog, and you can read this video in blog form if you'd like. Click the link down below in the description to this blog post so you can also read and see pictures as I'm describing to you how I've used this year for maximum results and joy. So a little bit of backstory on me. I moved to France in 2018, and I didn't learn about astrocartography until I moved to France. So I had already traveled the world. I've been a nomadic traveler since I was 18, honestly. I've been taking bus rides and Amtrak trains cross country and backpacking through Europe. From when my sun progressed into Gemini, I have been constantly on the road, traveling, wanting to learn, read, study, learn new things. That Gemini quality has just been a huge part of my motivations and aspirations for life since that sun progression. And I have been traveling ever since, but it wasn't until 2018 when I moved to France and learned about astrocartography that I started realizing, oh, places have stories and places have energies, and we can literally see it on a map, which is so cool, and in a relocated chart, which is so interesting. And everything fell into place when I moved out here to France. I'm living on my Saturn ascendant line and my Venus IC line, and there's so many cool things that get activated here. Like my 9th house, Jupiter goes into the 9th. I published a book here. I had so much success with my career here, with the part of fortune moving to the MC point exactly. My career has flourished, and so much of my life has flourished since moving here. And when I started leaning into 9th house themes and stories, my world opened up. But in this video, I want to teach you kind of what I did in the last 6 months to activate and harness for my goals and what I'm working toward in my life, how I've used astrocartography through my travels to accomplish these things. Of course, if you can't travel, if you can't do what I'm doing, which what I'm doing is crazy, right? I'm traveling nomadically, working from my laptop on the road. Most people aren't doing this. So I'm not saying that you should do this or anything like that. Obviously, having location freedom with your job is an incredible thing, and it's an incredible privilege and a blessing. And I am creating a course on that, on how to use astrocartography to find your best places for work, productivity, how to get free flights, how to get free hotels, all the things that I've been learning over these years. I'm creating a course, a live course on that, which will be coming soon. But when I say, when I share my story of how I'm living my life and what I'm doing, I in no way mean to say that you should be doing this or that you should be traveling full time at all. Everyone's, values and what they want for their life is so different. And for me, I value freedom. I value freedom of time, freedom of space, energy. Being an entrepreneur and running my own business is my dream because it satisfies every part of me, emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. And so as I'm getting into this video, please don't compare yourself to your life or your job because they're just different they're just different experiences, and to each their own, live and let live. I'm such a big believer in you do you and find what lights your fire and pursue that field or whatever it is. But let's get into the story, because I started this year knowing that something big was coming. Like when the year 2024 began, I was like, I felt it in my bones that something was coming. It was an intuitive psychic sense that I felt that something was around the corner and it was going to be really big. And so I went out to LA because if you remember from my previous video, which I'll include up here, but at the beginning of this year, I didn't have a French visa. For the first time in 6 years, my French visa didn't go through. And my husband and I were like freaking out for months because it was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be kicked out of the country and I won't be able to live with my husband. Like, that's insane. But I went out to California because I felt like I had to go to California. I felt a sense that I needed to go back home to my roots. I'm from San Diego. But I also noticed that there was a Jupiter transit crossing over California at the time of that. I wanted to activate that story because at the time, earlier in 2024, I was going through a Jupiter opposition, which is a cool transit. For the last year, I have been traveling to Jupiter lines. I went to Tallinn, Estonia to test that out. I went out to Japan. I went out to California where my other Jupiter line is. And I'm actually going back to my Jupiter line tomorrow back to Finland to live and work there for a little bit. But I have been going to my Jupiter lines because I've been going through a Jupiter opposition and I wanted to experience that story of growth and expansion and taking on a lot, maybe more than you can handle, but it's been fun. And Jupiter has been also transiting over my natal sun, and my natal sun rules my 10th house of career. My 10th house of career being in Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun is in the 7th. Jupiter's been transiting over that sun. Basically, if it's hard to follow along, definitely enroll in my courses or check out my course information because I teach more about this in my online classes. I knew I needed to go to California. It was just a gut feeling, and I also saw some cool transits. Jupiter transiting over that moon career line and the Jupiter ascendant line with the opposition there. And so I went out to California, and literally when I tell you, the minute I got there, it was like opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. It was just insane. The minute I landed, getting emails in my inbox, being on, Serious Joy TV with Christopher, like on his YouTube channel, I got that offer literally like 5 days into my trip. It was just wild. And the last time that I had a huge podcast collaboration like this level was when I was on my Jupiter line, when I went to my Jupiter line in Finland, and Chris Brennan of the Astrology podcast, like dream come true, pinch me moment that I will never forget, asked me to be on his podcast. Like, this always happens to me on Jupiter lines. And so I was like, damn, that transit is so cool. I'm going out to my Jupiter line to experience this. And literally that's what happened. What also happened was I knew that I wanted to create some new courses this year. I knew that I wanted to create a zodiacal releasing timing course, a live course to teach people on how to time your life, biography, but also I knew I wanted to create a certification course for my relocation astrology program. My students from my previous locational astrology courses, they've asked for test assessments, they've asked for certifications. And so I was like, okay, let's see like how I could build this and how I could create this. And so when I went out to California, it was the perfect place to like begin that journey because the Jupiter and the moon lines that I have there was just this sense of optimism of I can do anything. The world is my oyster. You can't dream too big. And that confidence and high self-esteem and somewhat delusional thinking, very Jupiter on the ascendant is delusional, overconfidence, thinking like everything's gonna be great. My experience there was so amazing. I felt so good and I felt so connected to my work, that heart-led work, moon on the MC in Leo, right? That heart-led work that when I was out there, it was just this sense of let's do it. Let's take chances. Let's create all these courses. Let's just go for it and dream big. And that energy was really helpful for me at the beginning of the year because I live on my Saturn line, and my Saturn line makes me overly critical and perfectionistic, and I restrict myself, I restrict my voice. I'm often like very nitpicky, especially with Mercury squaring Saturn. Like, I'm critical about my voice, or I'm critical about how I express myself, or the details of things, right? And so going out to that Jupiter and that moon line was really helpful for just starting the year in a nice place, getting the vision off the ground, getting ready to dream big and start putting the game plan in motion, right? So being out in LA was great. I was out there for about a month and a half time frame. It was an amazing place to launch. I also hired my first business coach when I was out there. I hired my business coach for a few months when I first launched my first course ever, and she was really helpful in getting that course off the ground. But I knew that where I wanted to go and where I wanted to scale, I needed to have like a long-term coach. And so I bit the bullet. I took a leap of faith. It was so scary because she's very expensive. She's like top of the line, but I hired her. She's a business strategist. So being an entrepreneur is really like being an athlete. You gotta have that sense of like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And being an entrepreneur is constant marathon. And it's like having someone on your side that can help you dream big for yourself and help you get there. She's just been so incredible. And so I hired her on that Jupiter line, which was big for me. This was the first part of the journey. That was the first month and a half of the year. I went to my Jupiter line and my moon career line, which was really helpful for getting the basic visionary outline of the year in place. Then I went back to my Saturn line because my visa was approved, and the Saturn line is very depressing right now because Saturn is on my ascendant in my relocated chart right now, and my body I've mentioned this, we won't talk about this too much. I've talked about this in my previous video, which you can watch up above, but being on a Saturn line during a Saturn return is very hard. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for anyone who lives on Saturn lines during Saturn oppositions, Saturn squares, and Saturn returns, because it is rough. And I am not my normal self here. I don't feel like I'm myself here. It's depressing and it's not like me. And I came out back to my Saturn line to get the details in place. So I hired a lawyer. So what I did was I hired a lawyer, I hired an accountant, I filed trademarks, I got contracts and terms and conditions set up for my courses. Like, I did all the detailed research back planning work on my Saturn line. And doing any type of research, study, building your skills, taking on more responsibilities in your life, really good for Saturn ascendant lines. And so I did that here. But I felt like I was being really restrictive, perfectionistic, overly critical of myself and my talents and my gifts. And I was like, I can't be living on this line in the middle of a launch. I just can't do that. So what did I do? I went out to Dubai. Then I went out to Dubai and I went to my Sun ascendant line, which is in Abu Dhabi in Dubai. And I have Sun ascendant there. And I also have a lunar node, sun line, to get more clarity on how I want to express myself, how I want to shine. I filmed a lot of videos there, filmed a lot of content. I was just having fun with creative self-expression and personal development. And that was a great place to just do all the creation, film videos, all of that. It was a wonderful place being on that sun line to do those solar activities as I was working on building the certification course and building the creative part, the visualization part of my business, whether it's on Instagram Reels, if you follow me on Instagram, or whether it was more creativity through YouTube videos, newsletters. Like, I remember I was just a creation machine when I was on that sun line, and it was really fun. It was really, really fun. I love my sun ascendant line. I left spontaneously, suddenly out of nowhere, because I had a gut feeling that I needed to leave. Of course my gut tells me that, because literally what happened, there was flooding in Dubai like a week later, which is just crazy. My gut, I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to be in Dubai during the flooding, and my gut was like, go leave early. And so I did. Met up with my husband. We went to Japan. Japan is on my Jupiter IC line. And I knew that I wanted to do something big and bold on that Jupiter line. Because again, I'm still going through that Jupiter opposition. Jupiter's transiting my sun. You could see it on the map, Jupiter crossing that Jupiter line. I was like, I want to take advantage of that. So I was thinking, what could I do that would be really fun? And it's interesting because right before I went to my Jupiter line, I had a sudden epiphany to start a podcast, an astrocartography podcast, and called Cosmic Compass, which you can subscribe down below. If you want to listen to the podcast and subscribe, definitely check out the link down below. But I realized I wanted to, random epiphany that came out of nowhere, I want to start a podcast. And so when I went out to Japan, I launched the podcast in Japan. And guess what happened? Podcast did extremely well, basically. Podcast did extremely well. It hit number 3 in the United States charts for our category. It hit number 1 in the UK and number 1 in Canada. crazy. Now the Apple iTunes charts change. They fluctuate every day, of course, but the fact that it hit number 1 and number 3, I mean, I was just like, what? I like couldn't handle it. I was like, this is insane. This is crazy. And so I did that on a Jupiter line, and it was great because I had the energy, the optimism, the joy of it. There was a hard Mercury-Pluto pair in latitude in Japan, which, you know, brought some difficulty to Japan, my experience in Japan. That's why I say it's not always about just the astrocartography line. You got to look at the parents too, which is why I really recommend the recent video I posted here. I didn't know about the parent when I went to Japan because I wanted to document. I wanted to collect the data. I didn't want to have any bias or thinking what I thought would happen on that line. I just wanted a clear, neutral space. And I looked up the map after I left Japan, and it was like, of course I have a Mercury Pluto there. I felt that Plutonian energy the entire time I was there. It was wild. But all this to say, I decided to launch something on that Jupiter line, and it gave me a lot of optimism, belief, faith, trust that I could do it, that it would be magical. And it freaking was. It freaking was. So after Japan, I went out back home, got situated back on my Saturn line, recouped from the Jupiter line. I don't know if I could live permanently on a Jupiter line. Jupiter lines are just so magical and amazing, but it's almost too much for me. Like, I do like a bit more grounding. I'm a Taurus sun, like I'm a Scorpio rising. I just like a little bit more groundedness than just like, oh my God, like Sag, you know, type Jupiter energy all the time. I really don't think I could live on a Jupiter line long term, but it's great for launches. It's great for having that sense of faith, belief, and magic and just going for things. And so I went back home to my Saturn line, grounded a bit, got everything in place, organized with the launch. I got like the systems, all the things on the back end. Saturn is great for detail-oriented work, like things on the back end, right? So I put the links together. You know, I hired more team members. I got more team members to help me with the back end stuff. Systems in place, the certification test assessment, getting that all organized. How is that all going to work with the systems and the back end things and all of the different structures of the things that go behind a business that you guys don't see? I got all that situated on my Saturn line, but I realized I got to get off my Saturn line if I'm going to have a successful launch with my certification program, my big course that I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest thing I've ever made. I don't want to be on a Saturn line when I'm like launching this. So I went out to London and I met up with my business coach. Basically, I was just a chatterbox the entire trip, getting on live streams, recording videos, writing emails every day, writing blog content, writing captions, all of the mercurial things. Guess what line I have in London? My Mercury in Gemini on the IC Astrocartography line there. So it was just this amazing place to launch and talk and go on live streams and just be very verbal. Also Gemini season. So it was like all this Gemini energy, all the stellium in Gemini that was happening. I was like, let's go to that Mercury line. Let's take advantage of that mercurial energy and like talk and write and express and just socialize. I was so social when I was in London. I was meeting up with people. I met up with one of my clients, one of my astrocartography clients. She reached out to me on Instagram and we met up for tea. And it was just a lot of that kind of mercurial, socializing, communicative energy that was taking place there. Perfect for launching and talking about something that you're making, right? But I still had 1 week of the launch and I was like, gosh, I don't want to go back to my Saturn line when I'm still in the middle of a launch of this amazing program and I'm so proud of it and I want to get the word out there. I don't want to restrict myself like I so often do being right on my Saturn line here in Metz, France. So let's go to Greece. Because Greece, I have my Mars ascendant line. Now, my Mars line is not my best planet. It's my malefic. I have a day chart. Mars is not on my team. Mars is not on my side. But Mars was in Aries at the time, and I have my Mars in Aries. Mars in Aries is a great time to get the word out on something, to take massive action, to be brave, to be courageous. And I thought to myself, God, wouldn't it be interesting if I went to that Mars ascendant line during the final week of this launch? That would be like a lot of power, a lot of energy, a lot of movement, a lot of courage to push the momentum and assertiveness out of me. I was like, let's just go see it. And I was a little worried because, again, my Mars is my malefic and Mars was transiting through the 6th house. But here's the thing, the 6th house is accidents and injuries and illness, which is what I'm always concerned about with my natal chart personally. It's something I'm more concerned about because the ruler of my body is in the 6th house of illness and I have my malefic there. So it's like not a great thing to have in a natal chart. But I thought, let's be optimistic, let's be hopeful and try to see the glass half full. And let's go and just see if maybe there'll be a different storyline connected to this. For instance, 6th house is health and illness, but it also rules productivity, to-do lists, and tasks for your work. And so I was like, what if we get this cool beneficial side of the house instead of just seeing it as a bad thing, or instead of just seeing this as a malefic thing, what if I could open my mind a bit and maybe go to activate the productivity element of the work house of the 6th house. And so, I don't know. I don't like my Mars ascendant line too much. I could never live there. No more than a week on my Mars ascendant line. But it was a great place for like getting the course out there and talking about it and having a lot of, one of the things I felt on that Mars ascendant line was just immense courage. Like no fucks given. Like boundaries. Like there was also the boundaries element. I was reading Essentialism when I was on my Mars ascendant line, which is so apropos for Mars. But it was just this place of like putting some boundaries up in my life, stepping into leadership energy. What is leadership energy? And really owning that. And the Mars ascendant line really helped me get a lot of clarity on stuff that I need to work on in my own life, things that I need to improve upon. And also it gave me the energy, the momentum for the launch, to finish the launch. My certification course has almost 330 students in the course. That is insane. That is insane. My goal was 100 students. That was like my goal. And I thought that might have been a bit of a reach because I've never had that many students enroll in a more expensive program. 330 students enrolled. And I really believe that it was timing, yes. I had a lot of cool transits, the Jupiter opposition, Jupiter hitting my sun, Jupiter now hitting my Mercury at the moment. Like, there was just a lot of cool timing at place, and I used the travels to go to those places to activate these stories, but also I really believe that the places helped me get there. I am really miserable on the Saturn line, and I feel bad for my husband because it's like, there's nothing we can do about this. Like, I can't live here. I cannot live on this Saturn line during my Saturn return, not for the goals that I have for my life, not for the things that I want to accomplish in the next 5 years. I cannot be living here. It's just, it's keeping me small. It's keeping me stuck. And no amount of mindset work, belief work, healthy habits, eating my greens, drinking my water, going for long walks, dancing, none of the things that I rely on to get me into a good aligned state is working here for me. None of it's working. And there comes a point where you have to admit to yourself, am I willing to suffer to be here? Or do I need to make a change in my life? And I need to make a change in my life. So I am leaving the Saturn line. I'm leaving tomorrow. My husband still has 2 weeks here. We're gonna move. We don't know where we're moving yet. It's kind of all up in the air. He doesn't have a job offer yet. I'm predicting a job offer to come this week though, because he's got some insane transits going on his MC at the moment in his 10th house of career. So I'm expecting something to come through, but there's just this sense of like, I used astrocartography this year to create the most insane results, success that I've ever had in my life. And it's not just timing. It's also location, and you can use location in astrocartography to be in places that better support you for what you're looking for. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, what is my priority right now? What are my values? What am I working on right now in my life? Do I need self-care and nourishment? Or do I need to be more productive and assertive and go after my goals in life right now? What do you want? What do you need? That is going to help you determine where to go, aside from the timing and the transits. Knowing what the astrocartography lines represent and the latitudes, the blends of planets, that's going to help you know where to go for what you're looking to do. And that's what I use in my life. This is why I love astrocartography so much. Because astrology is all about fate. It's all about how your life is divinely perfectly timed. If you're an ancient astrologer, if you study traditional ancient astrology, you will see that things are so divinely laid out, and it really makes you question your philosophy and what you believe about life and all of these things. And every traditional astrologer goes through that journey and that process of reckoning that. But the thing I love about astrocartography is that there is free will involved. There is choice involved, and you can decide where to be based on what you want to feel and what you want to activate. What story do you want to come into your life? And that's why I love this so much, because it is, to me, the blend of fate and free will. The blend of you have choice, you can decide how you want to feel in your life, but also you cannot avoid your life and you cannot avoid or escape what is meant to happen to you. I love this because it's that blend of both. You can choose where you want to be. You can decide where you want to be, what kind of energy you want to feel. And you also can surrender to the timing of your life and trust that what's for you will not go past you. And you're exactly where you're meant to be. However, you do have that choice involved at the same time. And I choose not to live on a Saturn line anymore during my Saturn return. I probably will come back when this Saturn line is over with. But I don't want to live on this line when I'm going through this. The timing of this. All of these things we can use by traveling, working remotely, moving. All of this we can bring into our lives. And I'm going to make a whole video on remote activation at some point, on how can you use this energy where you are and where you live. But the thing you have to remember is that if you're on a Saturn line, you're going through hard transits, just know you can't avoid that. You can use remote activation and bring the energy of a different part of the world into your life wherever you live, but you're still going through that. And the idea of you can't avoid fate is such a big one, but you can also decide to move if you want. You can decide to get up and leave if you want. And I'm overjoyed to be able to speak and share this information with you. If you want to read this story in written form and read the blog post with the photos and see this all in written content form, be sure to hit the link down below in the description to my blog post. I'll include it down below about how I've been timing my life and my travels using astrocartography. I hope this inspires you, uplifts you, and gives you support and encouragement. And I hope you have a magical day and happy astro travels. Bye!